How does an already successful wealth management firm plan for succession and enable the next class of leadership to grow the company exponentially?
We've always invested ahead of the curve and built a platform that can do more and attracted people that wanted to do more. So to me, it's like, how do everyone just do what they do best and have fun doing it?
And how does a company introduce a new focus on marketing to skyrocket their growth?
We're all kind of adhering to the same principles and the same rules. So let's talk less about the numbers because the number isn't the goal. The goal is a happy life.
On this episode of Growth Leaders of Wealth Management, I'm talking to SignatureFD's CEO, Heather Robertson Fortner, CMO, Crystal Mathis, and co-founder and chief strategy officer, Doug Liptak. To learn how you can keep a focus on the emotional values of your clients,
I want to be the destination in the industry for not only team members, but also clients who want to experience financial health.
and to finding new communities that offer huge opportunities for growth.
Our vision is to impact the lives of 10,000 families by 2030. And I believe wholeheartedly, at the end of the day, if you asked me why we do what we do, it is because we believe that healthy families, financially healthy families, change the world.
Join me as we dive into SignatureFD's journey from launching out of a CPA firm to commanding the Southeast. We'll learn about their approach of leading from the heart to stand above the crowd and how they seamlessly navigated CEO succession, which yielded exponential growth. SignatureFD is a wealth management firm that was founded in Atlanta by Doug Liptak, David Fisher, and Jeff Peller as an offshoot of the CPA firm Frazier and Dieter. Like many of the founders I've spoken to, the decision to launch a new business was founded in an intense demand from clients who didn't just want financial products, but needed real practical advice on how to manage and handle their money well. While there was no corporate ownership from the accounting firm to the wealth management firm, the two companies shared owners on each side. Here's co-founder Doug on the origins of SignatureFD.
At the accounting firm, so many of the clients were coming to us and asking us questions. They didn't know what they had, why they had it, what success looked like, and a lot of their other non-tax financial plans and strategies. And so at the core, we were really just wanted to build a company that put the client in the middle and help them answer their questions and help them navigate their finances. Obviously, taxes were a big part of all planning and strategies, so it was kind of a natural fit there, but really just the opportunity to help clients with everything. And they were confused, and we said if we could build a company that would just help them. There's like a lack of trust, and I think so much of the financial service industry is about financial sales versus financial advice and service. And at our core, we just wanted to go help people and build a company around what they needed. And I think it was also the lack of integration. So, I mean, you might have a trusted attorney or a trusted insurance or investment person. So it wasn't just saying that the industry wasn't trustworthy, but just like someone to pull it all together and put the plans and look at the multi-disciplines and how one decision on tax side would affect an investment plan or an estate plan and or insurance needs, and like who could put it all together. And so literally, we, like you said, we were just coming out of the accounting, and so my other two founding partners were CPAs as well. So I mean, there's a lot of learning to do at the beginning and a lot of education to build the expertise in the other disciplines.
With the launch pad of Frazier and Dieter's CPA clientele, the seeds of SignatureFD were planted, but it quickly became clear that they needed to branch off as their own entity if they wanted to truly grow the wealth management firm and attract the right people. Here's Doug again on their initial growth and why they eventually decided to rebrand to SignatureFD.
We really, because we were young at the time, we're still young, but it was 28 years ago. And so we really wanted to go slow and do it right and build the trust build the trust of the referring CPA firm partners. So we wanted to do it right, spend the time. And so we branded ourselves originally. We were originally wanted to look just like Frazier and Dieter as an operating division So our logo, our brand was at the time F&D Advisors. So we did everything to just look like a operating division of the accounting firm. And then the first clients did come from there. And we needed to teach the CPAs how to sell financial services and introduce financial services. So we, from day one, had a multidiscipline practice. So when we were doing mortgage, brokerage, insurance work, so it was nice to give the CPAs a way to introduce financial services to their tax clients. That wasn't just, okay, here's a turn over all your millions of dollars now, but just ease into it and make it really comfortable for them to introduce financial services. So the initial branding of and how we were piggybacking off their brand was great. But later we wanted to attract more talent to the team. And so that's, I think it was more advisor recruiting driven, more so than client driven, why we did a rebranding, because most other professionals, I mean, in the insurance investment space, they didn't want to go join a CPA based wealth management firm. They really wanted, I mean, the cultures of the CPA firm and a wealth management firm are two different cultures, and we ran it separately from day one. But I think really part of our branding was to like really attract other talent and other advisors, and but then build something that connected with the clients at a broader audience. So we did that about probably 6 to 8 years into it. That we rebranded and launched SignatureFD. And to me, the FD was honoring the past with Fraser and Dieter, but then also talking about financial design and the future-based company that we were creating.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Oh, I love this. That lovely interruption is SignatureFD's current CEO, Heather Robertson Fortner. Heather has been with SignatureFD for over 20 years, starting out as Director of Operations in 2003 and rising through the ranks. I had the benefit of speaking with Heather and Doug at the same time, and I got to see up close and personal how their dynamic feeds into the success of SignatureFD. Of course, I wanted Heather to interrupt. Let's listen back in for her perspective on how the company navigated rebranding the firm and how they thought of their relationship to the CPA firm as they moved into a new phase of the business.
I think it's really important to add on top of what Doug said that in the phase of the organization that we were in at that time, we rebranded around 2006, 2007. It was also moving the organization out of its infancy and more to what we liked to call those our adolescent years, which tend to be a little bit rebellious in the sense of, you're kind of moving away from where you came from your roots, and trying to be more independent in your thinking, in how you're running the business. And so thinking through, it was an interesting evolution of making a decision to move a little further away from the accounting firm, but to remain grounded in the honor of where we had been.
Right. And what's the relationship like today with the accounting firm?
I would say as we have, and I'll be interested in Doug's opinion of that, as we kind of moved through our adolescence and more into what we like to call kind of our early adulthood, I think we were able as leaders and as an organization to recognize the value that we had in really being able to leverage both what we had created and what they had created, and how the real power is in knowing who you are, knowing who they are, knowing what you're good at, knowing what they're great at, and then being able to bring those two things together in an integrated way, like Doug mentioned. And that really has been what I would say is kind of a full circle evolution of a business, and then bringing those together to the benefit of both organizations, not just one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that, Doug?
I do, and the CPA firm has had tremendous growth too. I mean, they're now a top 50 CPA firm. So when we started, they were just a local Atlanta-based firm, and now they're national, international. So they've also had a generation change too. So I mean, getting closer to the generation that's more in line with us as they've grown and turned over their leadership and opportunity to their younger generation. I think we're as close as ever with them.
In 2020, with Signature FD now a much more mature and growing company, Jeff Peller, one of the original co-founders, decided to step down from being CEO. Rather than tapping one of the other two co-founders in the business, Doug or David, for the chief executive role, Signature FD tapped internal successor Heather for the role of CEO. Succession within a company is never easy, and in the wealth management space in particular, we see a lot of firms stumble as they make the transition. Signature FD stands out because they have actually turned their succession into a huge growth opportunity, having expanded from managing approximately $4 billion in assets to around $8.5 billion in just the 4 years since Heather has taken on the CEO role. I asked Doug about how he thought about succession, what went into his decision to stay on board in the role of Chief Strategy Officer, and what they did to plan such a successful transition.
Yeah, and I think maybe we think about it a little differently. I mean, the succession is a popular topic, but to me, we've always been building a future company and a growth-oriented company. And so to me, if you're building that company, that's going to succeed and be lasting. And so, I mean, when we first started, I mean, we're a small company. Everyone there at the time's wearing multiple hats in multiple different roles. And to me, it's all about just taking off that hat and turning it over to somebody that's unique ability that can do it better. And so to me, we've been a growing company and people want to be part of something bigger than they are. And so to me, like you're just taking off hats all along the way and giving it to people that can do it better than you can because you're doing multiple different things. So to me, it's that mindset of growth and future-based company. We've always invested ahead of the curve and built a platform that can do more and attracted people that wanted to do more. So I don't think there was ever a point like, okay, we need to turn it over because obviously I'm still here and
You're still here.
and so to me, it's like, how do everyone just do what they do best and have fun doing it?
I pushed Doug again on this question because he's making it sound too easy. How can so many others have so much difficulty while Signature FD is finding even more success? I learned that the secret was the internal successor herself, Heather. Since she had grown within the company in a leadership role from the start, she and Doug had a shared history and vision that allowed her to catapult into a new phase for the company. Here's Doug with more on his transition and working relationship with Heather.
To me, it hasn't been like, okay, we've always been building a business together. And so who's leading the firm versus who's doing, I mean, we're, like I said, taking off different hats. Heather being outside the business and inside the business at the same time. I think so many firms, when David or I were in charge of managing the firm at different times, it's like we have clients and we have people and outside. And so it's great to see someone full-time focused on the business that doesn't have client demands, that definitely has a different skill set than a typical advisor coming up the ranks. So it was an easy decision just to be able to turn it over to somebody that has different skill sets than you that can do differently. And so it never was even contemplated that I was going anywhere other than getting to do what I can do best and enjoy it. And so that's it was an easy transition.
With Heather now in the driver's seat, I asked her what she thought were some of the main drivers of the huge growth they've experienced in the last 4 years. One of the key things she highlighted was their strategy of having clearly defined communities that they tailor their efforts toward. These communities were drawn both from their clients and from the specialties of new advisors. Here's Heather with more on how this approach, combined with nailing the fundamentals, has grown the business.
In 2020, it was just kind of like, I just got to put my head down and go do some work. I don't know that there was this strategy is going to yield these results type of thing. But what we did, and I liken it to, I watched a lot of baseball for a lot of years. And what I saw from a strategy standpoint was that teams who could manufacture runs won games. And it wasn't that every kid that got up to the plate was going to hit a home run. They weren't going to be the star pitcher. They weren't going to be, anything. They were all excellent at what they did. And every team had one or two superstars. But what the teams who won were really good at was getting runners to second base, because at second base you can steal third, and a single when you're at third drives you home. And so to me, it is likening it to operating the business from a people perspective, from a culture perspective, from an experience and product perspective, and really just from a financial operational perspective, doing those things with excellence day in and day out, no matter what, has yielded results and momentum in our organization that has been a platform from which we could then execute some pretty measured tactics and strategies for growth. But I think without that underlying core excellence, it's not sexy. It's not something that, an entrepreneur like Doug looks at and is like, man, this is just the best thing since sliced bread. It's just operating with excellence in every one of those areas with intentionality day in and day out. And so we got really clear really quickly about that first layer. And then we had always had what I would call, it's really a three-legged stool of how we thought about growth. And those three things are our strategic partners, our communities, and our geography. And so we had to have, as a board, some really intense conversations around if all three of these three things hit, we believe that we could have exponential growth. If we were to be able to have 8 communities, Signature Pro, Signature Exec, Signature Entrepreneur, Signature Vet, our community, Signature Women, if we were able to take fully staffed communities of advisors out into different geographies, and we were able to tie those communities and those teams to powerful strategic partners, that is exponential growth. And so every tactic that we explored and continue to explore in the organization from a growth perspective is focused on one of those legs of the stool. But our goal is for every strategy to hit all 3 of those, because we believe that that is the algebraic equation that leads to exponential growth.
With this core thesis of doing the fundamentals with excellence, SignatureFD was able to look outside their home base of Atlanta to new regions. In seeking more growth, they were able to really put their principles to the test. Here's Heather on finding more regional growth.
One of the things that we did to kind of test that thesis was we got some data, because I always believe that good people with good data make good decisions. And I think that advisors historically have been not data oriented, in the sense of they don't have great metrics around their business and what's working and what's not. And so they tend to make decisions on how they feel, not necessarily with hard fact. And so one of the things that we did was we got really clear very quickly on the data and the facts in the organization. What were our metrics? What mattered? What even mattered to measure? And then what were the facts? What was we have, a lot of history behind us. And what was the data telling us of what had been successful? And so we hired someone to basically give us an outlook of the RIA market, because we said, our grand vision, we would love to be a national platform. But in order to be national, we probably need to dominate the Southeast first. That's our home. It's where we are. We have our headquarters in Atlanta. We already have an office in Charlotte that, is just a wonderful, wonderful addition for us. And so we said, what does it look like? What would it look like for us to be able in the next 5 years to dominate the Southeast? And so we just got some data. Where are other RIAs? What is the opportunity? in those markets? What are the hot spots of markets in the Southeast that we would be interested in going into? And what the data showed was that, well, first of all, Atlanta is the hot market in the Southeast. Charlotte's a close second. But then there are places like Nashville and Tampa that are also, very hot markets. Well, it just so happens that our strategic partner, Fraser and Dieter, has offices in Tampa and Nashville. So in the uncovering of the data, we started to see, oh my gosh, there are real opportunities here to take our thesis of our three-legged stool, to lean into our partners, to lean into the geographies that we already have access to, and then to take these wonderful communities of advisors or go and recruit advisors in those geographies that are aligned, to who we are, how we think about wealth, but then also to those communities, and to really, like, this thesis is actually fairly sound.
As Chief Strategy Officer, Doug is now able to sit back and view the company from a higher level strategic perspective. Here are his views on the successes of the last 4 years.
I think it's really just the execution of all the strategies we've been doing. We've always had a 10 times mindset. So really, you can't incrementally, why I love being 10 times bigger is you can't incrementally grow there. So you have to do things differently. We probably would have had more success quicker if we've done less things. We didn't need 8 communities. We could have just done 1 and built it out. But then to me, building out the framework to do 8 different communities or different geographies or different strategic partners, we are building the framework for growth. And to me, that's when I push our growth, is because we built something really special that's going to be scalable and attract a lot of great clients and great advisors. The next generation, we've always wanted to build a destination. So I think I'm most proud of our track record of keeping advisors and keeping clients. And to me, it's been really easy. It's starting it with 2 other people. It's like everyone else, we have 120 teammates now, and all our job is to do, like, what did you love at your last job? Make sure we do that. What did you hate at your last job? Let's avoid that. Build a culture where we all want to be and attract, and then put the client at the center of it and serve them. So to me, it's not that hard. I think a lot of times people make things more difficult than they really are. So you just do the right thing and just hire good people and get out of the way.
It cannot go without noting that all of the success that SignatureFD has seen has been entirely without mergers and acquisitions or private equity. I asked Heather if they would ever consider M&A or private equity in the future.
Might be. I would love for there to be M&A. I personally, and this is Heather's perspective, I'd be interested in Doug's perspective as well. I don't ever want to do M&A just for the goal of doing M&A. And I think that is the thing that, as I have watched what has happened in the industry, I have seen wonderful people with great firms have to make choices and do something because they had money, they had to invest. Mm-hmm. Whether or not, those are the best things for them to invest in or the best teams to join, I don't know. I can't make those determinations. But I do know that the most important success that I feel we've had has been in being confident in saying, these are our people. These are the type of people we want to do business with. These are the type of people that we want to grow a business with, and not compromising on that. And I just would never want to do M&A just for the sake of a number or because I had to write a check. I only want to, life is short, and I believe, and I think Doug and I are aligned on this, we only want to do business with people who are culturally aligned, who believe similarly about wealth and what you do with wealth and the purpose of wealth, and who unfailingly want to serve the clients to the best of their ability. And that, I would do M&A every single day of the week if those are the types of people that we would be joining and adding to the firm.
Do you both have constant pressure from the phone calls that I'm sure you get from private equity and growth equity and all of the outside investors who have come into this space? I mean, does that feel like a constant pressure of, we've said no, is now the right time to say yes, you know?
Is it? I don't think I view it as a pressure. I think I take most of the calls and have the conversations just because I think we are very much, our philosophy has always been learn as much as you can. Like, we've always wanted to be diligent students of the industry. It's why we work so hard at ensuring that we have good quality relationships, study groups, just that we are, I feel like in order to be the best steward of our business, we need to understand not only our industry, but also other industries outside of financial services, because there's so many different ways to run businesses. And so really just diving into continuing to educate ourselves on all types of different business models, all types of cap stacks and transactions and all of that kind of stuff, I think just makes us better as we look to the future of the organization and continues to create optionality for us as we move forward in the business.
You might have noticed that Heather and Doug keep referring back to each other as we've gone through our conversation. And getting to speak with both of them together, I was struck with how they balanced two different but ultimately highly aligned perspectives. It's not always easy to make sure every part of your executive team is speaking the same language and farming for dissent in a way that is productive. I asked them what their strategic conversations were like behind the scenes.
Well, I think it's our purpose. We want the same thing. So at our core, I want more because I think we have something very special. I think, we talk about turning net worth into net worthwhile, and it's more of a purpose driven. So I think we bottled up something really great here. We have a unique way to do wealth, and not talking about portfolios, but talking about financial elements, grow, protect, give, live, and the pillars of wealth. And so I really believe we have something special in an industry of sameness. And so to me, I want more, not just to have more, but to be able to have more impact. And so that's where we're aligned. And so it's great conversations, but at the end of the day, we're in it together and building this. And so it's, I think, the two different perspectives. And you said Heather is very eloquent, and so she can say I want more and translate that to the same mission.
But at the same time, Meg, let's be real, those conversations are not always easy, because
Sure.
We were having this conversation multiple times this week per se, because there is that finding of the balance, right? Which is and this is the thing that I think most, when you talk about succession, I don't think most successors appreciate and value. And if you were to ask me, what's one of the secret sauces of our growth? I would tell you that the fact that we still have two founders in our business, that I am able to leverage their brilliance and their vision and their experience and their expertise, and they have empowered me and truly stand with me in order to lead. We don't always see eye to eye. We're not always aligned. We don't always agree on the best strategy, but I have a benefit that a lot of other G2s that are taking over these firms don't have, which is my founder is right there. The one person that I have been with, for 21 years now, literally raving for my personal success, but also reminding me of how special we are, what we've built, and what the grand vision is. And I feel like that is a very, very unique value add that we are blessed to have, that I think just continues to push us out of our comfort zone to continue to do those things that you're talking about, which is just dream about all the things that we can be.
Of course, doubling from $4 billion to $8.5 billion in 4 years isn't easy. Every growth-oriented firm comes up against struggles and barriers. After the break, I'll talk more with Heather and Doug about some of the challenges that SignatureFD has overcome. I'll also speak with Chief Marketing Officer Crystal Mathis about the new marketing strategies she has implemented since coming onto the team in 2020. There is so much more you don't want to miss. Stay tuned. Pod Pony is the all-in-one podcast partner for thought leaders and business owners. They provide everything you need for your podcast, including audio and video engineering, graphic design, podcast social media support, on-site filming, and more. From initial concepts and strategies to production and distribution, the experts at Pod Pony are with you every step of the way. Learn more about Pod Pony by visiting podpony.com and start your podcast journey today. Now let's get back to the show. All right, we're back. We left off before the break with Heather and Doug sharing their successes over the last 4 years and their smooth transition of leadership. Next, I wanted to dive into some of the challenges and learnings they've had as SignatureFD has grown. For Doug, the main challenge is maintaining the culture that has made the company so successful and doing so at scale.
I think just how do you focus on scalability, but maintaining the personal service and touch and building out teams. It becomes, as you get bigger, people are doing a task and doing it well, but then the job is to get the result done. And so how do you keep people from just checking off a box and doing a task, which is important, but then what is important is getting the right result. And so I think that's, as you're growing, that's always challenging, and navigating that because a lot of things affect multiple different groups in the firm. And so like everyone's working hard and doing the best they can, but then how do we pull it all together as we get bigger? I think that's a challenge as organizations are growing.
For Heather, one of the main challenges to growth has been trying to put a new emphasis on marketing, especially in the digital space. It isn't always obvious what the benefits might be and if they will outweigh the efforts of wading into an already very saturated space where it can be difficult for your voice to break through. Here's Heather on some of the difficulties they faced with their digital marketing efforts.
One of the things that we're trying very hard to lean into that has not been easy at all is digital. Learning how to do social well, learning how to actually market on social, learning how to drive leads, especially what, most of us would consider qualified leads. All of those, that has been enormously difficult and takes, I would encourage firms, like you're going to have to jump at some point. You're going to have to participate in that space. But it takes time to build the right mix of, well, do we do a podcast? Do we not? Do we do social? Do we not? Are we on people's LinkedIn? Are we not? Are we out speaking? Are we not? Like, what is the right website? What is the right, questionnaire? Like all the things, Meg, that your team does, right? Like find that whole strategy. And quite honestly, I need to put a plug in for you, which is like it takes a very skilled group to be able to do that, specifically in the financial services space where trust is everything. And building that trust digitally in the financial services space is incredibly difficult. And turning that into a lead for a true qualified, prospect, I think is even more difficult. However, I think as we grow, as firms get larger and larger, the conversation around how are you driving organic growth, as the numbers get bigger and bigger, it gets harder and harder to continue to drive double-digit growth every year, specifically if you're looking X market. And so institutionalizing the business, I really think that figuring out how to drive leads and prospects from a funnel inbound to the organization without more just saying we're going to do more hand-to-hand combat from each individual advisor. Like at some point you have to pivot that direction. But I think that the pivot has been a lot more difficult than we thought it was going to be. And it's continually evolving, which is a fascinating experience, especially when my favorite thing is not to be on social media, right? So, but oh my gosh, do I actually have to do that? And what does that mean? And how vulnerable do I have to be? And, all of those types of questions start to build.
One of the major ways that Signature FD has addressed the struggle to break into marketing has been bringing on Crystal Mathis. Crystal joined the firm in 2020 as the company's first ever chief marketing officer. I asked her what it was like to come into a firm without an existing marketing infrastructure.
I do believe that every good marketing person starts with data. And so I was really, really fortunate that they had done a good amount of research with a previous firm that I was able to glean some insights from, which were really helpful in us coming up with the brand promise, net worthwhile, and some of those, new things that you see within the site since me joining. But the other piece of this, I think, is just really getting to know the organization that you are doing marketing for. There's a benefit to bringing it. So my background, I had worked prior to that with a fintech company that I helped take public on NASDAQ, or I led out the communication strategy on that. But I had not really ever been in wealth management. And so I really wanted to get in, and kind of what attracted me to this organization was sort of their beliefs around money. And I wanted to keep that, because I think the core of any good strategy is really a narrative of why do people want to buy from you? And you do that through telling the story of the inception, our co-founders, why they started this place and how that has evolved over time. And so I wanted to honor that. And I wanted to make sure that with the data, yes, you do all the good things. That's the important part. But I really wanted to honor why this organization started to begin with. Why were they interested in helping families live their best life with their worth or their wealth, excuse me. So that was kind of the start of it all.
As a relative outsider to the business, I was curious if Crystal had come in with any preconceived notions of what she thought she would be able to achieve right away, and if those expectations held true.
Yeah, I think that for me, so I'm gonna divorce personal and professional, because when I walked in, yes, I am a results-driven person. So I walked in with I gotta get these results, and I'm gonna get them fast, and I'm gonna wow them, and it's gonna be so amazing. It's gonna be so incredible. But quite frankly, once I started to dig in, I realized the job was, just a bit bigger than I had in my brain, to be honest. I mean, it is something to come into an organization that is already well built and doing quite well on their own, and try to build a department from scratch within that. And so I had to kind of take a step back for a second and allow myself the space to lean in and listen. Because, the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It wasn't broken. There was nothing broken to be fixed. They're an organization that was doing okay, doing great. I mean, I don't want to say okay, they were doing fine, but they were needing to figure out how to scale for the future. And what does that look like when you take what is traditionally a relationship-driven business, which means you're sort of doing a lot of new business one-to-one, and create a function that allows that to scale without cannibalizing what has already worked. So it was an interesting endeavor. I laugh with Heather sometimes that my first weekend, I remember I had a notepad that I would keep on my desk, and I would jot down ideas, and I did that all the time. And there was one moment where I was like, this might be the first job I don't know that I can do. This might be a little bit too bigger than I think it is. But, once I dug in and I got to know the people, and, Signature FD, I think we have like a 97% employee rate or something, retention rate like that. So the people who've been there, they've been there a really long time. And I just got to dig in and sort of understand the magic of this place. And then you're just you're just putting a wrapper around it.
As Crystal mentioned, entering an existing space and trying to build something new, it's tough. When you're speaking with people who are very results oriented and haven't been operating with an eye toward marketing, it can be really hard to get buy-in and prove that your efforts are actually paying off. Here's Crystal on how she navigated getting buy-in from the larger SignatureFD team.
I always say I cut my teeth in agency. On the PR agency side is actually where I started. And being from that point of view, you are always in the perspective of having to justify why you are on retainer, because you're going to be the first one cut if something, has to go. And so I was very used to having some pretty clear, direct, transparent conversations around expectations, goals, all of those types of things. So coming into this role, I leaned really heavily into that, because not only are you talking about there's sort of an expectation with, I think a lot of people confuse marketing and sales. And there's this idea that it's like, I'm going to put in this amount of effort and I immediately get this type of result. But you alluded to it earlier. Marketing is multi-attribution. So there's never it's rarely, I don't want to say never, but it's rarely just one thing that's going to be like, that's the thing. And now I'm finally ready to go. So I had to have some really, really clear conversations, and I wasn't on the executive team when I first started. So I had to not only have those really clear conversations, but I also had to kind of, without being in the room, understand, well, where is this organization even trying to go? What does 5 years look like? What does 10 years look like? Now being privy to that room, the way I build out these things is we start from the top. What is our mission as a whole? And then what do we want to do in the next 5? And then what do we want to do in the next 10? And what that allows me to do is then build a strategy out that I can build for the year. I share that with the rest of the team. And I did this prior to being on the executive team. I shared, here's the strategy I'm thinking that is in alignment with what we have said we want to achieve as an organization. And being clear within that, here's the table stakes that are needed for this year. Here's what next year is going to look like. I don't expect us to do lead gen until this year, and just being really, really, really transparent in that. Because I think that's where people get caught, is that they want to, like me, I want to drive results right away. But results aren't only numbers. Results are a lot of things. And being able to be honest in what you're tracking that year. So that's the other piece of this, is like, you've shared the strategy. Here's what I'm thinking we need to do. Here's how this ultimately builds up to where we want to go, which is revenue. So being clear in that, but measuring. I measure every quarter. And I've had this conversation with other people within this organization, as well as people that I've mentored. Whether somebody tells you to measure or not, which, to be clear, no one had actually said, we need to know what's happening. I do a report every quarter. Here's what we said we wanted to achieve. Here's what we have achieved this quarter. Here's what the focus is for next quarter. And then I wrap that up at the end of the year, and I do the same thing. Here's what we said we wanted to achieve. Here's where we are, and here's what we're focusing on for the next year. And I'm honest in that. Here's what didn't work. Here's some bets that we made that didn't really pan out, because not everything is going to work the way you want it to. So I think it's just being really clear in those expectations and making sure that everybody is aligned with where you're trying to go. I want to give credit to the leadership team, prior to me having joined it, because there's, anybody who's looking for a CMO at this juncture in their organization's growth, it really takes the leadership team being behind that. Because I'll be honest, when we first launched Net Worthwhile and some of the things that we did, there was a little bit of like, I don't know about this, what are we doing? And the leadership team had to be on board with that for us to make some bets. And I think that's the thing that I also want to say is marketing really is an investment. It is not sales. It is not a direct return. It is knowing that you are investing for something for the long term. And so I just want to put that out there that, yes, I had to build the trust, but there also had to be a certain amount of inherent trust that kind of started with, here's what marketing does and here's what marketing does not do. And there was some learning around that, because I think a lot of people, again, they think it's sales, or they don't quite know, or they think it's sort of a catch-all. Even now I have to have conversations where I'm like, well, I'm not, There's social media experts that do social media expert things, and knowing that there's some differences between that.
So, what are some of the approaches that Crystal has taken to market all that Signature FD has to offer? For her, it's stepping back from worrying about specific marketing platforms and honing in on the why, which, for those of you who follow FICOM, you know our entire strategic framework starts with the why. The heart of your business should be the heart of your marketing. We don't often find traditional marketers who align with our approach, but it's clear that Crystal gets it.
I can say this at Signature FD, and I can say this for previous organizations. And this is why I started with talking about the why. I actually served on a panel at Edge recently, and one of the women who was on the panel said she captured it perfectly. She said, a lot of people come to marketing and they ask for a LinkedIn strategy. You don't need a LinkedIn strategy. You need a content strategy. And then LinkedIn is just a vehicle by which you will disseminate that content. That is where I start at the core of everything. I start with your why. I start with your purpose. I start with why you exist. Why are you here? And then we create some narratives that then get spun out. And then everything else is really just a lever, to your point, or a tactic that you're pulling. It's taking that story and then disseminating it appropriately within the channels, whether that's digital marketing or social media or media relations, where you're actually just landing some articles. All of those things are just extensions of that why. And so just starting with, there's like an exercise, and I can't remember what the exercise is called, but we used to do it back when I was on the agency side. Who's the hero in your story? We are not, actually. We are not the hero. The client is. And so how do you build a narrative that is aligned with that? And then everything else is truly just a lever. And then you're just telling that story in those different avenues.
For Signature FD, the why is tied into their brand promise, net worthwhile. This brand message focuses in on what might be going on in a client's life to require services of a firm like Signature FD. Here's Crystal with more on this brand strategy.
So I started with our brand promise. That is the table stakes, because that's going to be our why. That is where Net Worthwhile was born. And that was months in the making and figuring out and honing down and research and all those things. We start there. And then what that allows us to do is, I do believe, yes, you have to align with the things that people are searching for. So by no means should you not have market commentary or things that are going to bring you up in an organic SEO perspective. So have those things. But then there's the other side of that. Once people have landed on your site, or they have entered into your drip, or they're a bit warm, they're now ready to have a different level of a conversation. And where you can hook them from some of those timely market commentaries, where you're going to actually get them to want to raise their hand and talk to you, is going to be the extension of that brand promise. And so we have Net Worthwhile, which is this idea that your wealth is just a tool to help you live a great life. It's your wealth and your worth. It's that intermix between those two things. And so because of that, what we're allowed to do then is create some stories that are in align with, here's a formula that I actually use. And I actually said this on the panel with Edge. It's called SMART content. And the formula is pain point, timely narrative, plus life inflection point. So think of it like this. If you are a woman executive, and pain point might be that you are straddling the line between taking care of family and home. Okay, that's the pain point. Timely narrative, wage gap. You also get paid less than your male counterpart. So now you get to hijack some of the news. And then life inflection is you just change jobs and you have a new benefits package and you're trying to figure that out. Your net worthwhile essentially then becomes, how do I take these challenges and create a net worthwhile blueprint that is aligned with the resources that I have and the goals that I want to achieve? So you see where it's like, we have our chief investment officer do all of this timely type of conversations. But once they're in our system, we want to talk to them on a personal level, because that's what they're going to align with. That wealth is personal. Money is personal. You're going to have some very personal conversations in that room. So that's kind of where we started from a formula, like scientifically formulaic perspective. That's kind of the formula that I use.
I was curious when speaking with Crystal if she was able to track the successes of these programs and where new leads are coming from. Were there any levers she was able to pull that were clearly bringing in new clients? Here's Crystal on one of their most successful approaches.
Yeah. So we did start when I first came in. For the first 3 years, we didn't do any lead gen. I focused only on brand promise, building out content, getting our nurtures ready, tried and true stuff that we needed. Once we were able to have that, one of the things that's working really, really well for us is actually this interactive questionnaire. I didn't actually think it was going to work as well as it did, but it aligns with our brand around wealth activation, GPGL, Grow, Protect, Give, and Live, you may see on the site. But it also allows us to capture from that initial intake of them coming into our site some information around things that are important to them within those pillars. And then we can have content that caters to that. So they come in, they get a unique GPGL or a unique blueprint based off of where they are in life. They're asked, I think it's 10 questions, a set of 10, 2 questions within each. It's a weighted scale. And then they get some information spit back. So that's another thing. I think the thing that makes it popular is people like to hear, it's like why Enneagram and all that. They like to hear, give me more insights about myself. Like, why do I think this way? So we are able to do that within the GPGL questionnaire. But then on the other side of that, we're also able to gather some information from them that allows us to cater some good content. And then once they have raised their hand and said, you know what, I like this, I'm ready, hand is raised, we can then send all of that information along over to the advisor to say, here's what they have said is important to them. Here's some information that you might need when you talk to them. We also recently implemented an AI prospecting tool. And so what that allows us to do is person enters with the questionnaire, but then the AI prospecting tool kind of layers in on top of that with some life inflections that might have happened for them. Maybe they changed jobs or they're about to retire. And all of that is able to go over to the advisor because marketing can't control the close. We can only bring them in, but we can arm the advisors with the tools that they need to be able to close well and effectively.
For Crystal, marketing is really a tool for the future. While it's important to nurture and maintain communities that have already been built, her focus is also on bringing in the next generation of wealth, even if it makes the old guard a little bit nervous at first.
Marketing has to look to the future. And so I alluded to this a little earlier that not everybody loved some of the new changes that I was doing when I came in. But Net Worthwhile and how we sort of skewed the site to be more content driven versus sort of what you see. I think somebody once called it to me like a hamburger, which I have never really recognized until somebody said it, but it's sort of like your header and then you got some meat and then you got like your footer. And we wanted to change that a little bit and make it a little bit more focused on the insights and the content that people are going to come to your site for. But we heard some, I don't think this works. This seems like it's for younger people and that kind of thing. And it kind of was. We didn't want to cannibalize who we currently had and who our clients are today. But we knew that we had to start building something that newer wealth, people who are inheriting a great deal of wealth, but maybe don't have in some of those built-in resources. They're going to Google. And then they're going to go to the brands and the sites that seem to be aligned with their values and their beliefs and how they think of money. And it's a really, and I appreciate because I've done it, it's a really tricky thing to be able to honor who you currently serve while also trying to reach those that you want to get in the future. I think we've made a nice balance, but it was not received as well in the beginning, but I have to look at what's happening in 5 years. And now here we are, and I see other brands are, I don't want to say copying, but they're starting to do a lot of the net worthwhile type of messaging. We started to see that a couple of years ago. And myself and the leadership team at the time just had to hold fast to some of the, grumblings that we were hearing because we knew what was coming. And now, of course, it's highly appreciated and celebrated. But that did take some time.
So what's next for Signature FD? For all three of my guests, there is an aligned intention to invest in building out new communities. Here's Crystal's take on future opportunities to build community.
We're leaning into our communities. You talked about it a little bit. You're like, hey, how do you reach this? You're really passionate about reaching some of the newer wealth and some of these new audiences. And this is an industry that has served a very specific set of people for a very long time. And I want to shift that. I want to change that. I want to see how that looks different. We've got money transferring to women. We've got money transferring to a younger generation that believes inherently differently than even I do. And I don't consider myself extremely old. And so I want to see what that looks like. And I think our communities has the power for that. We have these communities which service essentially, sub business units, client segments. And SIG Women is one. But another thing is that we are based in Atlanta. And this is a place where a lot of Black wealth is as well. And I know that hasn't been a segment that has been highly served because there's not a lot of generational wealth. But we're now getting into a generation of African Americans who have been able to accrue a certain salary and a certain wealth. And, I think our communities is a great place to kind of start seeding into some of those newer audiences in a really, really authentic way.
For Doug, future growth is all about maintaining the culture that they have crafted over the years while continuing to seek extraordinary differentiation.
I want it to be just the same, but just bigger. I think that's, to me, I don't want to lose what we have. It is special. And if we're going to lose what we have, I don't want to be bigger, but I think I'm optimistic that we can grow and keep it. And to me, we've always done things differently. And so, I think to me, we do study the industry and what other people are doing. And to me, if you do what everyone else does, you get average results. And so how do we become extraordinary? By doing something out of the ordinary and approach it differently. So I want to be extraordinary but the same.
And for Heather as CEO, the growth plan for SignatureFD is spreading their value of financial literacy for a brighter future.
I want to be the destination in the industry for not only team members, but also clients who want to experience financial health. Like that to me, just speaks to my soul around, why I even got into this space in the first place, which is if people have good knowledge about how to be financially literate and they know how to talk about it and understand how it affects their emotional worlds, and they can put those two things together, you can literally change generations to come, because that is something that gets passed down through families. And that to me it's how I think we as financial professionals contribute to making the world the place we want it to be. And so for me, I would love to be that destination.
SignatureFD has taken their partnership with CPA firm Fraser & Dieter to foster a multidisciplinary approach to wealth management. By utilizing clearly defined communities, they are able to tailor their strategic approach to address the unique needs of their clientele. They have a highly aligned executive team that collaborates and constructively debates strategy bets, enabling them to take big swings. And with a new focus on marketing to individuals on a human level, instead of getting lost in the numbers, SignatureFD has been able to double their managed assets in just 4 years. After my time speaking with Heather, Doug, and Crystal at SignatureFD, here are my key takeaways. 1. Know your communities and make sure you have a well-defined approach for each one. From the outset on their website, SignatureFD invites their clients to self-identify with one of the communities they serve and makes them feel seen and heard. 2. When you're developing your marketing, remember that money is deeply personal. Heather and Crystal are keenly aware that when you are managing people's money, you are also managing their security, their futures, and their ambitions. Speaking to people's fears and hopes helps firms stand out from many other wealth management firms that are offering similar advice and products. 3. Growing a successor from inside a company can make for a far more seamless transition. Heather didn't just step into the role of the CEO overnight. She had been developing her career at SignatureFD for 20 years. The values and principles that have made SignatureFD have such an impressive retention rate were already deeply ingrained into the work that she had done. 4, an outsider eye can provide a fresh perspective on what is working and what needs to be developed. Crystal Mathis's marketing strategy has been courting new and untapped markets for SignatureFD. Reaching out to communities like the rapidly growing population of Black wealth in Atlanta who haven't been addressed by the industry provides new inroads for meaningful growth that is aligned to the firm's values. 5, keep your executive team highly aligned. Doug, Heather, and Crystal have developed an impressive collaborative approach. They all commit to staying open to debate and dissent. They are honest about successes and failure. By keeping a focus on everyone excelling at their unique set of skills and trusting one another's expertise, they are able to take big bets and see remarkable growth. I'd love to hear what resonated with you from today's episode. What have you learned from today's guests? Is there a topic we touched on so far in these episodes that you'd like us to talk more about? Where are you finding the most value in these conversations? We love hearing your notes and feedback. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I invite you to subscribe so you can be notified when the next one drops. And I would greatly appreciate a review, which will help us continue to grow this amazing community. For more growth resources like this one, please visit ficompartners.com/insights. And be sure to tune in to the next episode when we'll be speaking with the incredible team at Pathstone.